Everyone mocked the poor pregnant woman until the billionaire learned the truth. Nobody in the history of Harrington General Medical Center had ever been asked to mop a floor twice in 1 hour. But Felicity Rowan, charge nurse of the 4th floor, had asked Mara Osei to do exactly that. "It's still streaking," Felicity said, not looking up from her clipboard. "The floors on this wing are marble. They require a specific technique." "Obviously." Mara looked at the floor. It was spotless. She looked at Felicity. Then she picked up the mop and did it again. She was 7 months pregnant. Her feet had been swollen since February. The compression socks helped, but not enough. Every hour she spent standing sent a dull ache climbing from her ankles into her lower back. But she said nothing. She never said anything. She had learned, in the 8 months since coming to work at this hospital, that silence was her most useful tool. She wrung out the mop. She started at the far end of the corridor. Behind her, at the nurses' station, 2 younger nurses exchanged glances. One of them, barely out of school, looked genuinely uncomfortable. The other had already learned to match whatever energy Felicity brought into a room. 7 months, Felicity said to no one in particular. On her knees on a hospital floor. That baby probably doesn't even have a father. The young nurse who was uncomfortable looked down at her paperwork. The other one laughed. Mara heard every word. She always heard every word. She kept mopping. Her jaw was set in the particular way of someone who has decided that the only way through certain things is straight through them. She thought about Kofi. She thought about the way her brother had looked in his hospital bed 18 months ago, thin and grey and frightened in a way she had never seen him frightened before. He had always been the brave one. The one with the full scholarship and the study groups and the textbooks stacked 3 deep on every surface. Watching illness reduce him to something small and scared had been the hardest thing she had ever witnessed. The transplant costs were staggering. Their mother worked 2 jobs already. Their father had died when they were teenagers. Mara had been putting herself through nursing school on grants and part-time hours at a clinic downtown. There was no version of the math that worked. Then attorney Carrington Wells called her. His client required a gestational surrogate. Complete anonymity, both directions. She would carry a child conceived from donors unrelated to her, bring it to term, and relinquish all rights at birth. The compensation was more money than Mara had ever seen in one place in her life. The contract was ironclad. The terms were clear. She could not tell anyone. Not her mother. Not her co-workers. Not anyone who asked why she was suddenly, visibly, inexplicably pregnant. She signed. Kofi got his transplant. And Mara came to work at Harrington General because it was the only hospital in the city with a housekeeping opening that could accommodate a pregnant woman on a modified schedule, and because she had to work, because the contract covered the medical costs but not the months of living she still had to do while she waited to finish what she had started. She did not know, when she accepted the assignment, that she would be placed on the 4th floor. She did not know that the 4th floor was the Harrington family's floor. She squeezed the mop. She started a new section. Behind her, footsteps approached from the elevator bank. She recognized the rhythm without looking up. Expensive shoes on marble. A particular kind of stride. She moved her cart to the right. Pressed herself close to the wall. Made herself as invisible as possible. Prescott Harrington walked past her without slowing. He did not look at her. She exhaled once, quietly, and went back to work. The Harrington name was everywhere in that building, on the plaques, in the lobby, on the research wing that bore the family's foundation stamp. The 4th floor existed specifically to serve the family and their closest associates, which meant the orchids were fresh twice a week and the lighting was warm and the staff maintained a particular caliber of deference that the rest of the hospital did not require. Prescott came every Wednesday. He was 41. He had built the Harrington Group from a respectable inheritance into something considerably larger through a combination of precision and a near-total absence of sentimentality. He was not cruel. He was simply focused in a way that left very little room for anything that did not directly affect the next decision he needed to make. His father was dying on the 4th floor. Arthur Harrington Sr., 81, stubborn as architecture, was losing his body to a progressive neurological condition that had been taking pieces of him for 2 years. His mind remained fully intact, which was both a mercy and a particular kind of cruelty. Arthur had one request before he died. He wanted to meet his grandchild. That was the reason for the contract. That was the reason Prescott had agreed to an arrangement he would not otherwise have considered. His father had given him everything. This was the only thing Arthur had ever asked for in return. The contract had been managed entirely by Wells and Associates. Prescott reviewed it, signed it, and filed it away. He did not know the surrogate's name. He did not ask. He told himself it was cleaner that way. More professional. Less complicated. He told himself a lot of things. On the Wednesday that mattered, he arrived at 8 in the morning. His assistant Bridget was already beside him before he cleared the entrance, reviewing the day. He nodded along. In the elevator he checked his phone. On the 4th floor he walked to his father's suite. He passed the woman with the mop. He did not see her. That same afternoon, Claudette Ashby arrived. His fiancée moved through spaces the way certain people do, as though the space had been arranged for her benefit and everyone in it understood this. She wore a camel coat and carried flowers for Arthur and smiled at staff in the bright, efficient way of someone who had attended enough charity events to make warmth look effortless. She stopped at the nurse's station. Felicity was there. They knew each other. Fundraising galas, hospital benefit dinners. The easy shorthand of women who occupied the same social tier. Mara was changing a bin liner near the water fountain at the end of the corridor. Claudette glanced her way. Something about the image seemed to genuinely offend her. She said something to Felicity. Her voice was not lowered. I don't understand how someone in that condition is even permitted to work in a clinical environment. Surely there are liability concerns. Felicity made a sympathetic sound. I flagged it with administration twice. But she shows up, she does the work, there's nothing technically to be done. It's inappropriate, Claudette said. It's a private patient wing. Some of us come here to visit family in difficult circumstances. We shouldn't have to navigate around, she gestured vaguely toward Mara, that. Mara tied off the liner. She did not look up. She picked up the bag, replaced it with a new one, moved her cart to the next station. She had a policy about moments like that one. She allowed herself to feel it fully, the heat of it, the sting, the specific pain of being described as that while standing 5 feet away. She let herself feel all of it. And then she put it somewhere. Not buried. Stored. For later. Later, alone, she would call Kofi. He would answer on the second ring. He would say Mara in the way that meant I'm here. And that would be enough. For now, she moved the cart. The following Wednesday was the one that changed everything. Prescott arrived with a briefcase and an expression that suggested 3 parallel problems. Bridget relayed messages in the elevator. He stepped out onto the 4th floor moving quickly. He was annoyed that morning. An acquisition negotiation had stalled. A board member was causing complications. His mind was full of variables. He did not see the cleaning cart at the end of the corridor until he was almost on top of it. He stopped. His eyes moved from the cart to the woman behind it. She had turned slightly at the sound of his approach. She was heavily pregnant, clearly uncomfortable, holding a spray bottle and a cloth. He looked at the cart blocking part of the walkway. "Is this going to be a minute?" he said. His tone was not aggressive. It was the tone of someone who expected obstacles to resolve themselves quickly. Mara looked at him. Then she moved the cart immediately, smoothly, with practiced efficiency, pressing it against the wall and creating a clear path. "Of course," she said quietly. He walked past. He didn't thank her. Didn't look at her. He had a meeting to get to and a dying father to visit and a stalled acquisition to solve. The woman in the corridor was a variable that had already resolved itself. Mara watched him go. She thought, I am carrying that man's child. She picked up her spray bottle and went back to work. It was 3 hours later that the pain started. Not the familiar ache. Something sharper. Something that arrived in waves and did not stop between them. Mara was in the supply room when the first one hit. She gripped the shelf and breathed through it. She waited for it to pass. The second one came faster. She reached for her phone. She dialed the number she was permitted to call in a medical situation, Wells and Associates. Carrington Wells's assistant answered. She said she needed Mr. Wells immediately. Her voice was level. Her hands were shaking. By the time she made it to the corridor outside the supply room, her legs were uncertain beneath her. She sat on the floor against the wall, knees up, one hand pressed to her stomach, breathing carefully. A junior orderly saw her and ran. Within 60 seconds there were 2 nurses in the corridor. Within 3 minutes, Dr. Ingrid Paulus, the on-call OB, was crouching beside her. Within 5 minutes, Mara was on a gurney. The 4th floor had seen a lot of medical urgency in its time. It had never seen it quite like this, not in the corridor, not involving the housekeeper, not with the charge nurse standing at the edge of the gathering crowd with an expression that was trying to decide whether this was interesting or inconvenient. Felicity settled on inconvenient. Somebody get that cart out of the corridor, she said. The examination room was quiet and monitored and professionally calm in the way that well-run hospitals manage to be calm even when things are not calm. Dr. Paulus was thorough and direct. The baby's heart rate was elevated but stabilizing. Mara's blood pressure was high. There were signs of early labor stress. Nothing yet that couldn't be managed, but nothing that could be ignored. You need to stop working, Dr. Paulus said plainly. I know, Mara said. I mean today. I mean permanently, for the rest of this pregnancy. Mara looked at the ceiling. I know. Dr. Paulus paused. She had been an OB for 19 years. She had seen a great many things and she had developed a reliable instinct for when a patient's situation contained more than what was visible. Is there someone I can call? Family. My brother. But he's in Michigan. The father. A long pause. Mara said nothing. Dr. Paulus looked at her chart. Then she looked at Mara again, with the careful attention of someone beginning to understand that the chart did not contain the whole picture. I'm going to need to contact the other party in your prenatal agreement, she said carefully. There are genetic flags in your blood work that require cross-referencing. Do you have attorney contact information? Carrington Wells, Mara said. He's already on his way. Wells arrived. He was precise and composed and spoke with Dr. Paulus privately for 11 minutes. He reviewed the medical flags. He understood their implications. He understood what the cross-referencing would produce. He made a phone call. He was not happy about making the phone call. But the contract had provisions for medical necessity. And this qualified. Prescott was in his father's suite when Bridget appeared in the doorway with an expression he had never seen on her face before. She managed his calendar, his communications, his professional life with near-total composure. She did not look composed. There's an attorney here, she said. Carrington Wells. He says it's urgent and he needs 5 minutes. Prescott looked at his father. Arthur, propped against pillows, raised one eyebrow with the energy of a man who had spent 80 years being interested in things. Wells, Arthur said. That's the surrogacy attorney. Prescott stood. I'll be back. He met Wells in the consultation room down the hall. Small room. 2 chairs. Frosted glass. Wells set a folder on the table. He explained the situation with the economy of someone who had already decided that clarity was more important than comfort. The surrogate was in the hospital. She had been on the 4th floor all along. She was in early labor stress. She needed the paternal genetic history for the medical team to proceed safely. Prescott sat very still. Wells slid a document across the table. A personnel record from the hospital's housekeeping department. A photograph in the upper corner, standard ID photo, taken 8 months ago. The woman with the mop. The woman with the cart in the corridor. The woman he had walked past every Wednesday for 8 months without slowing down. The woman he had looked at that morning and said, "Is this going to be a minute?" The room went very quiet. "She works here," Prescott said. His voice came out flat. "She has been working here since her 2nd month of pregnancy," Wells said. "Double shifts on some weeks, according to her employment record." Double shifts. The words came out like a calculation being checked and found wrong. She needed income during the pregnancy. The contract covered medical costs. Living expenses were her responsibility. Wells paused. "She is a nursing student on leave. She took the housekeeping position because it was available and could accommodate a modified schedule." Prescott looked at the photograph. He thought about Wednesday mornings. He thought about the compression socks. He had never consciously registered them, but now they were there in his memory, suddenly visible. He thought about the way she pressed herself against the wall. The way she moved the cart without being asked. The way she said of course when he asked if she'd be a minute, as if making space for him was the most natural thing in the world. He thought about Claudette, standing at the nurse's station, saying we shouldn't have to navigate around that. He thought about Felicity's voice drifting down the corridor. That baby probably doesn't even have a father. He thought about himself, walking past. Over and over and over. Walking past. He stood up slowly. He straightened his jacket. He asked Wells which room she was in. Wells told him. He stood in the doorway of the examination room and knocked on the open door. Mara looked up. She recognized him. Of course she recognized him. She had been recognizing him every Wednesday for 8 months, and stepping aside, and holding herself carefully, and waiting for him to pass. This time he was not passing. He stepped inside. He stopped in the middle of the room. He looked at her for a long moment, and then something happened to his face that she had not expected. The control he kept over his expression, she had observed it many times at a distance, it simply left. What replaced it was undisguised. He looked like a man standing in the wreckage of something he had built without knowing it was going to collapse. "I didn't know," he said. "I know you didn't," Mara said. "I need to say something and I need you to let me finish it." She gestured for him to continue. "I walked past you every week for 8 months, he said. I looked at you this morning and treated you like an obstacle." He stopped. His jaw worked. "Things were said about you on this floor. By people who had no idea who you were or what you were doing or what it cost you. And I was present for some of it. I didn't say anything." He looked directly at her. "I am more ashamed of that than I know how to say." Mara looked at him steadily. "I wasn't ashamed of being poor," she said quietly. "I was ashamed that I kept expecting people with power to see me." She held his gaze. "I stopped expecting it a long time ago." The words landed the way she intended them to. Like a door closing. Not harshly. Definitively. Prescott took it. He did not deflect it. He did not offer an explanation that reduced it. He simply absorbed it the way someone absorbs a truth they have earned. "What do you need right now?" he asked. "To not lose this baby. Besides that." She looked out the window. "My brother's number is in my phone. On the nightstand. I haven't called him yet because I didn't want to scare him." She paused. "I could use someone to make that call for me." He picked up the phone. Kofi answered on the second ring. He listened to Prescott explain who he was and what had happened with the controlled efficiency of someone who had learned to process medical information quickly. Then he asked one question, "Is she okay?" "The doctor says she's stable," Prescott said. "The baby is stable. She needs rest." A long exhale on the other end of the line. Tell her I'm getting in the car right now. Michigan is 7 hours. Tell her I'm getting in the car right now. Prescott looked at Mara. He says he's getting in the car. She closed her eyes. A breath left her that seemed to have been held for a very long time. Dr. Paula stabilized Mara over the next several hours. The early labor stress responded to treatment. The baby's heart rate normalized. By evening, the immediate crisis had passed. Mara was admitted for overnight monitoring. Prescott remained at the hospital. He did not do this dramatically. He did not plant himself in the corridor or make announcements. He sat in the family waiting area and worked from his phone and told Bridget to push his morning meetings. When a nurse updated him on Mara's status, he thanked her by name. At 9 in the evening, he asked if he could speak with Mara briefly. She said yes. He sat in the chair beside the window. The city was lit up below them, all those lives moving through the dark, unknowing, and continuous. My father wants to meet you, he said. He's been asking about the baby since August. He doesn't have a lot of time left. He looked at her. But I'm not here to make you feel obligated. I'm here because you deserve to know that what you did means something to a real person. Not to a contract. To my father. To me. Mara was quiet for a moment. What's he like? Prescott thought about it. Honest. Inconveniently so. He has opinions about names. He told me 3 weeks ago that I've been running the company correctly but living my life incorrectly. He paused. He's usually right. Mara looked at him. He sounds like Kofi. Prescott almost smiled. Is the offer real? She said. The surrogacy support provisions Wells mentioned. Proper leave, proper compensation for the last weeks. They should have been activated months ago. That's on us. On me. His voice was direct. It'll be corrected immediately. And when you're ready to return to your nursing program, I would like to cover the remaining costs. Not as charity. He looked at her steadily. As something owed. Mara looked at her hands. She thought about what Kofi always said, stop calculating risk and start calculating what you actually want. I'll consider it, she said. He nodded. That's all I'm asking. Kofi arrived at 2 in the morning. He came through the door still wearing his Michigan sweatshirt from the 7-hour drive, and he crossed the room in 4 steps and held his sister for a long time without saying anything. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were bright. He looked at her stomach. He looked at her face. He shook his head slowly. You should have called me earlier, he said. You have school. Mara. You have school, she said again. Firmly. The way older siblings say things. He sat beside her and held her hand for the rest of the night. In the morning, when Prescott arrived to check on her, he found Kofi in the corridor outside Mara's room. The 2 men looked at each other. Kofi said, You walked past my sister every week for 8 months and didn't know her name. Prescott said, Yes. A silence. She saved my life, Kofi said. In case you're still calculating what this cost her. I'm not calculating anymore, Prescott said. Kofi studied him for a long moment with the particular appraisal of a younger brother who has spent his life watching people try to get around his sister. Then he stepped aside. She said you can come in, he said. There is a moment that happens sometimes in hospitals, when the severity of things suddenly shifts, not because the situation has changed but because the people inside it have. Mara met Arthur Harrington 3 days later. She had been discharged by then, cleared for rest at home, with strict instructions and a follow-up schedule. Prescott had arranged modified private transportation. The apartment she had been renting was small but quiet and it was hers. But she came back to the hospital to meet Arthur. She came because she wanted to. He was smaller than she expected. That was always the way with people whose names occupied enormous space. In person they were just people, trying to hold on. He looked at her when she entered his suite and said, without preamble, "You're the one who saved my family, then." "I made a choice," Mara said. "For my own reasons. All the good ones do." He gestured to the chair beside him. "Sit down. My son stands in doorways. I can't stand it." She Saturday. He looked at her stomach. His expression was the kind that belongs to people near the end of their lives when they encounter the beginning of someone else's. It was not sad. It was enormous. "Does she move?" he asked. "She never stops," Mara said. He laughed. Genuine and brief and completely real. "That's us. That is completely us." They talked for 2 hours. He asked about her nursing program. He told her about his wife, Roberta, who had been a schoolteacher and who had been the only person in 50 years of marriage who could tell him when he was wrong and make him feel grateful for it. He told her about building the company. About regrets he had accumulated and things he had fixed too late. He said, "The thing nobody tells you about having power is that the damage you don't notice is the worst kind. You can't repair what you don't see." Mara looked at him. "Did your son tell you what happened here?" "He told me everything." Arthur's voice dropped. "I want you to know that I am sorry. Not because of the contract. Because of what my flaw felt like for you. Because no woman carrying a child should be made to feel like furniture." He looked at her directly. "You deserved better from all of us." Mara was quiet for a moment. "Your son said something similar." "He's right more than he lets on," Arthur said. "He just doesn't like being soft about it." A pause. "He's changing. You should know that. He's been different since he found out." He looked at her with the clear eyes of someone who had nothing left to be polite about. "He sees you. He finally sees you." Mara looked at her hands. "It's a little late," she said softly. "It always is," Arthur said. "That's not the point. The point is what you do when you finally see clearly." Claudette Ashby came to the hospital one last time 2 weeks later. She had heard things. The way people in her circle heard things, through carefully casual conversations at carefully casual events. She had heard that Prescott had spent considerable time at the hospital beyond his father's visits. She had heard that the surrogacy situation had become complicated. She had heard his name mentioned in connection with the pregnant housekeeper in a way that made her jaw tighten. She found him in the corridor outside his father's suite. She was precise and controlled and her voice was very even. "I need to understand what's happening." The surrogate needed medical support, Prescott said. She'd been working housekeeping on this floor for 8 months without anyone knowing who she was. "So you're her benefactor now." "I'm correcting a failure," he said. "Ours." Claudette's eyes narrowed slightly. "Prescott." "She was called names on this floor," he said. "In front of staff. In front of me, and I didn't hear it because I wasn't listening. She was a pregnant woman scrubbing floors on double shifts and the people on this wing treated her like she was nothing." His voice was completely calm, which made it more effective than anger. "She was carrying my child, Claudette. She sacrificed her nursing program and her health and her privacy because of a contract that was designed entirely for our benefit. The least we owe her is basic human decency. The least you owe her," Claudette said carefully, "is in the contract." The two of them looked at each other. Something had been clarifying between them for weeks. This was the moment it became clear. "I don't think we want the same things," Prescott said. It was said without cruelty. Without drama. With the particular simplicity of someone who has finally stopped pretending that a problem doesn't exist. Claudette left the hospital that afternoon. She did not make a scene. She was too composed for scenes. She simply left, and the absence of her was, for Prescott, quieter than her presence had been. The baby came on a Thursday in early March. The labor was 12 hours and the last 2 were the hardest, and then everything was different. The room shifted from urgency into something else entirely, something that had no word in any language Mara spoke, though all of them tried. The cry was sharp and real, and it filled the room completely. Dr. Paulus placed the baby in Mara's arms. Mara looked down. Small fingers. Dark eyes, just beginning to open, trying to make sense of light for the first time. A face entirely her own. "Hello," Mara whispered. Her voice broke on the word and she let it. "Hello, baby girl. We made it." Kofi stood at the foot of the bed. He was not trying to hold himself together. He had stopped trying about 30 seconds after the cry. He simply stood there, undone, with his hand over his mouth. Prescott was in the corridor. He had waited outside for the birth. When the nurse came to tell him it was over and both were well, he pressed the back of his hand to his mouth and stood there for a long moment before he trusted himself to move. When he entered the room, he stopped just inside the door. Mara looked up at him. She looked back at the baby. "Amma," she said. "Her name is Amma." He repeated it softly. "Amma." He moved closer. He looked at the baby with the complete abandon of someone who has stopped trying to appear unmoved. His eyes were bright. He looked like a man who had been given something he wasn't sure he deserved. "She looks like herself," Mara said. "Yes," he said. "She does." He looked at Mara then, not at the baby, at Mara. "Thank you. For everything you went through. Everything you didn't say. Everything you gave." He stopped. "I know it doesn't." "Don't finish that sentence," she said quietly. He stopped. "It does," she said. "It matters. That you see it." She looked at her daughter. "That's enough for today." Arthur Harrington Sr. met Amma on a Sunday, 2 weeks after her birth. Mara brought her in the early afternoon when the fourth-floor corridor was quiet and the light through the windows was the particular pale gold of late winter trying to become spring. She carried Amma down the corridor she had mopped 100 times. The nurse's station was staffed with people who recognized her now from a different angle. Some of them had heard the story by this point. Some of them had not. All of them were quiet as she passed. Felicity Rowan was at the station. She looked at Mara. Then at the baby. Something moved across her face that was not quite shame and not quite apology but was in the general direction of both. Mara did not stop. She walked to Arthur's suite. She knocked. Prescott opened the door. He looked at the baby first, the way everyone did, and then at Mara, and he stepped back to let them in. Arthur was propped against his pillows. His eyes were open. When he saw them in the doorway, he went very still. Then he smiled. And it was the most complete thing Mara had ever seen on a human face. "There she is," he said softly. Mara carried Amma to the chair beside his bed and sat down. She held the baby so Arthur could see her clearly. He looked at Amma for a long time. His hands rested on the covers. He did not reach out. He simply looked, with the full concentration of someone who understands that some moments have to be held still. Then he said, barely above a whisper, "I asked God to let me live long enough to meet my grandchild." He looked up at Mara. "I didn't know he would also send me the woman who saved my family's soul." Mara felt the tears before she could stop them. Arthur's hand found hers. His grip was thin but deliberate. He held on. "She has Roberta's forehead," he said. "My wife. She would have loved you." He looked at Mara directly. "Don't let anyone make you small again. You hear me? Not ever." "I know," Mara said. "I know you know," he said. "I'm saying it anyway. Because somebody should have been saying it all along." Arthur Harrington died 6 weeks later. On a Tuesday morning, with Prescott beside him, after having said everything he wanted to say. He had held Amma 3 times. He had told her things she was too young to understand and would never remember, and that mattered entirely anyway. He left the world lighter than he found it. Mara believed that. She returned to her nursing program in September. She was the oldest student in 2 of her classes and the most focused in all of them. She had a daughter now, and a brother who called every Sunday, and a life that had been built from choices she had made without any guarantee that they would lead anywhere good. They had led here. On a Tuesday in November, she walked through the entrance of Harrington General Medical Center wearing her nursing student badge and her good coat and comfortable shoes. She took the elevator to the 4th floor. She walked down the corridor. The floors were as clean as they had always been. Someone else mopped them now. She walked past the nurse's station. Past the supply room. Past the window she had cleaned so many times she knew which angle caught the streak. Felicity was at the station. Their eyes met. Mara held her gaze for one full second. Not with anger. Not with triumph. With the quiet certainty of someone who knows exactly who she is and no longer requires anyone else to confirm it. Then she kept walking. She was due at a clinical observation in the pediatric wing in 8 minutes. She had prepared for it since last night. She was going to be excellent at it. She passed the private suite where Arthur had lived his last months. She passed the spot in the corridor where she had first pressed herself against the wall to let Prescott walk by. She thought about what Arthur had said. Don't let anyone make you small again. She was not small. She had never truly been small. She had simply been waiting for the world to catch up to what she already knew about herself. She turned the corner. She kept walking. There is something worth understanding about people who survive the kind of year Mara survived. They do not emerge from it untouched. They emerge from it precise. They know exactly what matters and exactly what does not. They know the difference between people who see them and people who are simply looking in their direction. Mara knew. She knew it when Kofi called on Sunday mornings and asked about her week before asking about Amma, because he always asked about her first. She knew it when Prescott showed up on time, consistently, not with grand gestures but with reliability, which is the thing that actually counts. She knew it when Amma reached for her face with both hands and held on, with the full strength of someone who has no idea yet that strength is unusual. She knew it in herself. The woman who had mopped a floor twice in 1 hour because a charge nurse told her to. The woman who had heard herself described as that and kept moving. The woman who had carried a secret and a child and a grief and a hope all at the same time, alone, through 8 months of being invisible, and had come out the other side intact. Not because she was extraordinary. Because she decided, every single day, that she was worth the effort of continuing. That is the whole story. That is all of it. That is enough.